Hey there, folks. Chris McLean back with another episode. And in the studio today, I've got Aidan from Sowa Marketing Agency, and they specialize in helping real estate agents and plastic surgeons get established as authorities by getting them featured in major media outlets. Excited to get into all things PR and promotion and all that kind of good stuff. Aidan, thanks for swinging by the show, mate.
Yeah, great to be on.
Good to have you here. So take us through. You're obviously a fairly young guy. Have you been sort of operating for a little while now? Is this your first business? Sort of how did you get up and running as in your marketing agency?
Yeah, definitely. So originally, just started learning about digital marketing around 2 years ago. I really
Okay.
just learned a lot about like lead generation, MailChimp, like sort of like I feel like the basics
Yeah.
of marketing.
Mm-hmm.
But what we've really transitioned to, like sort of like during the pandemic, is transitioning more to like the branding side of things. So that's what our agency is mostly focused on nowadays, which is like PR.
Okay, cool. So sort of working with media and helping specifically. How did you sort of land on that niche of
It was basically
real
through
estate and plastic surgeon?
Yeah, it was basically through like trial and error. We had like a lot of success with like real estate agents and plastic
Mhm.
surgeons. And like over time, we've just been like, okay, that's our niche. We're just gonna dial
Yeah.
down on that rather than keep kind of searching.
Yeah, yeah. And that's obviously a fairly high ticket, but that's a sort of a higher ticket client base, right? For your real
Yeah,
estate agent, they're sort
definitely.
of they got bigger budgets and they're um, yeah, good clients to sort of start searching it and getting media for.
Mhm.
When what was your background in that sort of PR and media? Is that something you studied? Again, was that just again sort of a strategic choice? How did you come and that aspect of the service side of your niche?
Yeah, so I mean, originally going back like all the way back to the beginning, I was like originally studied like at the MIT Enterprise Forum, Cambridge. I learned a lot about digital marketing then. I didn't really study PR until like much later, where like I
Okay.
realized it was like, wait, there's so few agencies out there which are like
Mm,
offering this at a competitive level. Like there's so many agencies out there, which weren't guaranteeing actual results. So like
mm,
basically they would put clients in retainers and they wouldn't have any sort of deliverable at the end, thus leading the clients frustrated. So it's like, okay, if I could just do a little bit better than that, then
yeah.
automatically I can be seen as like an authority in my industry.
Yeah, yeah, nice. So how did you start to then build up those media relationships, and what does that process look like when a client comes to you? What actual work are you doing? Are you talking to media? Are you doing press releases? Is it more of a digital component? What does that actual work look like?
Yeah. So I mean, press releases definitely are great for like someone who has like absolutely no press. But what we really do is we work with like major media outlets like Forbes, Inc., Entrepreneur, Fortune, even like occasionally like with some of our clients like Wall Street Journal, New York Times, like that type of publication.
Yeah, right.
And the way we go about doing that is we first have like an introduction call. We really like to figure out exactly what their needs are, what their desires are, because not everyone should be on Wall Street Journal, New York Times. It's not like their target audience. So we like to understand, okay, what are their needs and what can we help them accomplish based on what they've already done. So we do like a full assessment. And after that, what we do is we help them like just take it to like that next level through like our PR services. And that could be either like on TV or more digital based like Forbes and Inc.
Okay, so are you essentially writing articles and blog posts and content? Are you doing that aspect where you say, okay, I've got a plastic surgeon who's doing something that's interesting enough to put them up in Forbes? Are you writing that content? Are you repurposing something that they've already written, sort of authority content? Are you repurposing? Are you rewriting? Is it a combination of all those sort of things?
Not exactly. So what we do is we pitch like these different media outlets. So like it could be like a mention within an article just where it makes sense, or it could be
Mm,
even like if the plastic surgeon, some of the clients we've talked to like pretty famous already in their industry, so they deserve, in my opinion, a full article in like some of these types of publications. Just
yeah,
reaching out to these publications, they're like, oh wow, like we want to feature people like that. The work that they're doing is like awesome. So
mm,
that's what we really do in that first assessment call. We want to just figure out where they're at right now. Do they have any press? Do they have any podcasts? Anything like that? Do they have social media? All those things are important. If they don't have that, then we usually kind of start slower, walk their way up there.
Okay, so you're more leveraging their existing asset rather than creating assets for them to
Yeah, we tend to
get
work
that
with
publicity.
clients in usually like the top 90%. Those are usually like our target audience. Businesses which are just starting out, I mean, that's great, but I feel like they still have to build out their story before they can get featured in these major media outlets.
Yeah, right. And just really out of interest, what is that sort of article? I mean, again, it's going to change, but in terms of real estate, is it finding a real estate agency that's selling $1 million Hollywood homes or something like that, and featuring the beautiful homes or the celebrities that they're homes that they're listing, and for plastic surgeons, what does that sort of article look like? Is it who they're helping? Is it what they're providing? Just interested to understand more about what does that content sort of end up looking like for those. And what do
Yeah,
those
it's really
articles talk about? It's
yeah, it's like a
interesting.
combination of all those different factors. So
Right.
sometimes like for example, after COVID, there were a lot of people wondering like, oh, how has housing markets changed? All that. That was
Mm,
a really topical thing at that time. So at that time,
right.
we were getting real estate agents featured into Forbes for that reason. Now like they might be known as like selling like $1 million homes, and people want to read about that. Basically it changes according to what people's interests are at that time,
Mm,
and that's
mm,
constantly changing month by month. People are looking for different things.
mm. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah. I guess when they've got some sort of an authority position, then they could talk about housing market, or they could talk about the bubbles about to burst, or they, that kind of article. They become that an authority to talk about something within that industry, rather than
Mhm.
necessarily specifically what they're doing. Right. So
Exactly.
your job's to find what that kind of tease out what
Yeah.
they could talk about with some sort of expertise and authority.
Right, right. And we really position them accordingly because some people like they don't know all this great stuff about them. Some of this stuff should be shared. So we help find out what their strengths are and get them featured into like the media.
Mm, okay. And then what is that process? Is that sort of a workshopping process, like
Yeah.
brainstorming, sort of going through and understanding what they do, and then going, okay, we maybe we had a client last month and they talked about the housing market, for instance, in
Yeah.
Hollywood. You're also an expert in that for this other region. Did you sort of have some set kind of content pillars, I guess, if you like, of
Yeah,
here's some stuff that
definitely.
works really well for real estate and plastic surgeon. If you have authority in these sorts of things, that's something you could talk about.
Yeah, for sure. And also, I mean, we've touched a bit on like the digital PR side, but also like there is the other aspect, which is TV. And a lot of our clients have had like a lot of success with that. Just because
Right.
it's one thing to read about someone, let's just say in Forbes. And a lot of people look at Forbes, they think it's like super difficult to get into, but really a lot of people can get into it. It's not like a super difficult publication to get into, but getting on
Mm,
TV is like the next level. In my opinion, so being able to get
yeah.
into like Fox Business, Bloomberg TV, we get our clients featured in these different publications, and they can put that on their website like a recording. It just looks really good
Yeah.
from authority perspective.
Yeah. So is that sort of on-air interviews and that sort of thing, or little
Exactly.
snippet stories about them?
Yeah, I mean, actual interviews like on Fox
Right.
Business or Bloomberg TV, or like I mean, some of our clients even go bigger and they get into like Good Morning America and stuff.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. Yeah. That's pretty next level stuff. So I like that it's really that traditional PR with a
Yeah.
sort of digital tilt. So is that the main focus for your business, sort of getting them on those traditional media outlets, digital outlets?
Mhm.
Do you have any sort of additional sort of marketing or promotional stuff, or is it really purely in that sort of PR? Yeah, getting them featured in media.
Yeah, I mean, we do a lot of stuff. I mean, essentially, I mean, at this point, it's kind of difficult to think of some type of marketing service which we can't provide to our client. But usually, what
Mhm.
we do is we just specialize in helping brand them as authorities first. Because sometimes people think, oh, I'm gonna run a bunch of ads, or I'm going to post a bunch of social media. But if we can get them to be trusted, that makes all those other types of marketing a lot more effective. Like some of our clients, they wanted to run
Mm.
ads, but after we implemented PR getting featured into like a lot of different major media outlets, they've seen like 5x conversion rates. So they're saving a lot of money just by taking a little bit of extra time, spending a little bit extra money up front. So
Mm.
that way we can help them. Let's just say they want to run some ad campaigns on Facebook, Instagram, Google, whatever platform they'd like.
Mm. Yeah, I mean that having that little strip on your website that says as featured
Yeah.
on MSNBC, Fox News, Forbes, Entrepreneur.
Yeah.
I mean, that's massive in terms of authority. If you've actually can then sort of link that into interviews, it's to have that credibility of actually being featured on those sorts of things. I guess that, like for me, that's you might feel that Forbes and Inc. and these sorts of publications are quite difficult to get into. What's the criteria? You say it's quite easy to get into these publications.
Yeah.
But what is their criteria? They must have some sort of journalistic integrity.
They do.
At some point of like, who is this person? Is there, as you say, you work with people that already exist in and have some level of base authority. Sort of what would be a minimum requirement for somebody that was looking to get featured on something like Forbes?
Yeah, so I mean, first off, they have to have a website. We don't work with any clients who don't have a website. That's just like absolute must. And they have to have like some sort of social media following. So we say like between like all the different social media have at least like 10,000 followers. It could be like 2,000 on Twitter, it could be 2,000 on Instagram, but a combined following of at least 10,000. So that way that really builds up an authority. And or it could be even like an email list. That's respectable as well. So if they have 10,000 through an email list or a podcast, any sort of like audience, that's probably like one of like the requirements. And for Forbes in particular, they're constantly changing policies. Recently, to give you an idea, like Entrepreneur, they recently made a change and now only want famous people in the publication. So those types of things do change with time. Like sometimes it's still possible to get quoted those publications. You just have to be really famous.
What's the classification of really famous? Like celebrity level, influencer level, TikTok celebrity?
Yeah, basically like a household name, like a Beyonce or Jay-Z, that type of person. Yeah.
Wow, and that's for entrepreneur, or are you seeing more and more? There's
for
more
like entrepreneurs. Like I guess if like someone like in the entrepreneurial space, like Grant Cardone, someone who's like really well known, who people will be like, oh yeah, I know him. Not someone like who's that. So that's basically how like entrepreneur works. But Forbes, it's more open because really what the site's about is educating people. They want to just provide value to their readers. So if you're able to provide a lot of value or be able to show like some cool stuff, that's useful to Forbes, and they can make money off of that, because the way Forbes is, it's a subscription-based platform, and if you're able to help them make money, they're happy to feature you. That's essentially the way it works.
Yeah, well, and is that a similar kind of catch for the live shows? I imagine that is that like a next level up, that you've got to say, I've got 10,000 followers if I want to be on the Today Show, whatever. Is that 100,000? Is that more celebrity status? Is that a big Hollywood GP or big Hollywood kind of celebrity status, or is that again sort of accessible to anyone that's got a good story to tell or has some expertise?
Yeah, so probably at like the highest end is like a Good Morning America. Like that's probably like the biggest publications, like at the highest level, the media outlets. So you definitely need like a really solid story. You have to have been featured in like a bunch of different major media outlets. It needs a combination of all those different factors.
Yeah, it's super interesting that stuff is accessible, but so at a level, right, for somebody that, so you need to sort of have 10,000 sort of followers as a minimum. I think that's a good metric to have for people, so they can, if they started wanting to look at this kind of stuff. Do you purely work in the States, or do you work in, obviously these like entrepreneur.com, Forbes.com have global audience?
Yeah.
Do you work mainly with cool businesses, or are you sort of bringing in people from a global perspective as well?
Yeah, we typically work with like English-speaking countries, just simply because I mostly speak English. So like United States, Canada, UK, those are like probably our top three. I think we might have gotten a client maybe somewhere else, but those are like the main ones. And like UK, we're getting our clients into like UK-based publications like Daily Mail, The Mirror. Canada, we have like CTV News, like those types of publications. And I mean, Forbes also works for all those different places. So that's great as well.
Yeah. So we talked about Forbes a lot. What are the other sort of main publications that people should, if somebody's interested in getting featured, sort of what's that? Where are the best places for them to sort of start thinking about getting featured?
Yeah, so I mean, usually if like you're just starting to get featured, everyone wants to be in Forbes, everyone wants to be like Wall Street Journal, New York Times, but you don't have to start
Mhm.
out there. You can literally just start out with just like a podcast, being able to get onto like a smaller podcast, could literally have like 10 people just watching. But what that does is that helps you build up that authority in your
Mm.
industry because it shows that you're able to think on your feet essentially. And
Yeah,
that's
right.
what I really like about like just getting that started. So for someone who is just, wanting to get a little bit of media exposure, maybe they're not ready for Forbes, I would say like starting to post on social media, getting to some smaller podcasts, even reaching out to maybe a local news network. They I When I was like a lot like younger, I got featured into like a chess publication. And at the time it wasn't that difficult. It was just a question of just reaching out and they're like, oh yeah, we're happy to feature you. So you just have to not be afraid to ask in that regard.
Mm. Yeah, I guess that's the thing, right? The news channels are they're looking for stories every single day,
Yeah, and they don't wanna go out
365
visiting.
days a year. That's a lot of content. So if you've got something valuable there, yeah, yeah, making a phone call could get you featured on the local news or something to at least give you something to start that banner at the bottom of your top of your website saying as featured on,
Exactly.
you know, Idaho local radio or whatever it is, right?
Right, right, yeah, that's correct. And
Mm,
anyone can
mm,
also start with, like, a press release if they just wanna have, some as seen on logos as well.
yeah, yeah. And talk about that. Do you sort of is podcast another channel that you work with at all in terms of getting people featured on podcasts? Is
Yeah,
it
we
that
have, like,
another channel?
a number of, like, major podcasts, like, I don't know if you're familiar with, like, the Ed Milet Show. We also get people on David Meltzer's, like, podcast, so top podcasts like that. Jordan
Yeah,
Belfort, he's another one.
yeah.
Bradley's Dropping Bombs. So there's a lot of different podcasts, which we get people on that level. So some of our clients come to us exclusively. They want podcasts. So we
Yeah,
walk
right.
them up, we get them into industry specific podcasts. And over time, we get them into like some of these really big ones, which we do have
Mm,
connections with. So it's not too difficult to get them on too.
mm. Yeah, it's got to be like someone like a Jordan Belfort or that high top level show. Is how do you position a real estate agent for that kind of show? Is it a do you have to shift the entrepreneurship or sales techniques, or how do you because to make it interesting for that type of show?
Yeah.
Obviously, they've got a demographic. They know Jordan's probably talking about sales strategies and tactics and that kind of thing. Do you have to reposition that person and their authority to make it match that show? And so, how would you go about that for a real estate agent? I could see that sort of that connection, but for
Yeah.
a plastic surgeon, how
Yeah.
would you make that transition to
Probably
someone
not a
like Jordan
plastic
Belcher?
surgeon, but like a real estate agent, it makes sense because it's like
Mm,
sales. So we get them into, let's just say, the sales school with like John Belfort. And we position them. We always make all of our clients just listen to like the podcast, listen to like previous
right.
episodes, be prepared, have like good microphone, all those types of things. So that
Mhm.
way, like they don't disappoint and they can continue to get on to more podcasts after that.
Yeah, yeah. What shows would you position a plastic surgeon into? I guess there's a I imagine fairly high level industry medical type shows. Not my industry, so I'm not familiar with it. But sort of who's operating at the highest levels in the podcast world or broadcast world for that type of industry.
Yeah, we typically have like a huge list. We pitch to like a bunch of different plastic surgeons. Different podcasts. We typically focus more on, for plastic surgeons in particular, we like to focus a lot on TV. So there's a lot of health-based TV shows. So we like to focus on those more so than the podcasts.
Mm,
Um, it's just like kind of like a preference. I mean, they both work definitely.
yeah, I guess that plastic surgeon. There's lots of that sort of plastic surgery nightmares and that sort of thing. So there's certainly, and I can imagine there's an appetite
Mhm.
for that sort of content, maybe more in the States than elsewhere in the world. But yeah, I can imagine there's a good appetite for someone that come and sort of speak to the concerns, some of the disasters, how they help people. Yeah, so I imagine there's a good appetite for TV for that kind of thing and guest appearances and that kind of stuff.
Yes, and the budget's very high. It's like 5,000 to 15,000 a month is like the average for like a plastic surgeon. So they're looking to spend money on marketing. They need a way to stand out in their authority, and getting on TV is like a perfect way to do it because not too many people are doing that.
Yeah, well, yeah, yeah. So, and most of the channels that you're directing people to US based.
Yeah, most of them are US based. We're very focused on the US, but we also have like, UK stuff. Like the top ones in UK and Canada, we all have like in terms of like news outlets.
Okay. Yeah, cool. So, and coming back to you and your business, is it just you in your business? Do you have a team?
No.
What's the structure of that look like?
Yeah, I definitely have a team. I probably would never be able to get clients simultaneously on TV and get featured in major media outlets and also get into podcasts all at the same time. That'd be way too much for just me personally to handle. So I have a team of people who are specifically like, okay, this is the TV team, this is like the podcast.
Right.
So specifically according to that. And they're kind of working under me like more of like a contractor type of basis. So it's like on a per project basis. Yeah.
Cool. And how have you built that out over the years? Just as being personal contacts, people you've met sort of along the journey. How have you managed to build out that team?
Yeah, so essentially managed to build out that team just through like contacts, like people introducing me. They're like, "Oh yeah, I have a friend who has like really good connections at Forbes or Inc." And we just kind of built that up over time. Like originally, I was just doing a lot of this stuff myself, but that's not really a sustainable way to grow
Yeah.
your business. You eventually have to scale out and really start to delegate some of this stuff.
Mm. Yeah, and as you say, you create those verticals of expertise, and you've got someone who is really great at booking podcasts, someone who's really great at booking TV, and imagine having those networks and connections. It might be pretty rare to find someone that has connections across all of those different sort of media channels. So it makes a lot of sense. You sort of got specialists that you can bring sort of within those verticals.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, and you work fully remote. It's a remote team.
Yeah, it's all remote. I mean, everyone on our team is like all within the US, so everything yeah.
Nice. Everyone gets to work from home. Have you said what movement have you sort of seen over the last 18 months or so? Has it been good times? Obviously, there's a lot of attention has been drawn into news media and news channels with everything that's going on. So there's definitely a lot of attention and focus in that area. It's probably been good for business, or what have you noticed over the last 18 months or so?
Yeah, so I mean, originally when let's just say going back to like April of last year, I would say we lost a lot of different clients just during that time, just because it was an unpredictable event. Never been in like a pandemic before. People were freaking out. They thought the world was gonna end. And usually like around like a couple months later, we really started to pick up in our marketing. So we're like, okay, we've got to go all out, like an outreach, reach out to like a ton of different people, figure out what they need. And we really dialed down on just focusing on people's needs. And before that, we were mostly actually in person. So just walking, like kind of like just meeting with people physically, but that's impossible. So we transitioned to like more of a remote team, and it's actually allowed us to scale a lot faster.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's a fairly common story is that remote distributed team has actually allowed a lot of agencies to build out their internal networks and get more done and get more reach, just because you're saving time on commuting.
Exactly.
You don't have to focus just on your high street or city. You can instantly go global. So it seems a pretty common thread that agencies have found. The ones that have found that way to actually work remotely really well, it's actually enabled them to scale pretty quickly.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah, awesome, man. Thank you so much for dropping by the show. It's been sort of really interesting. Sort of always interested in this sort of media space, and you've certainly got a pretty distinct business there. Like you said, competitive advantage in something that not a lot of agencies sort of tend to in that digital PR space. Really interesting. If people want to find out more about you, where's the best places for them to come and get connected with you?
Yeah, they could just check out our website, sowaagency.co. There's a bit about what we do there, but I mean, also they can just reach out to me. My phone number is 401-219-4207.
Beautiful. And I'll drop all those links to you. Got a Calendly booking link there as well, and LinkedIn and all your social channels. I'll drop those in the show notes so people can click on those and come and get connected, whether they are your industry or they just want to learn more about how you're doing what you're doing and sort of how you're helping and getting exposure for people. But
sure.
really interesting stuff, mate. Thank you for dropping by. I appreciate you taking the time out.
Yeah, it's great to be on the show.
Thanks so much. You can stick this on your banner on your website now, as seen on. Thanks so much, buddy. Appreciate your time.
Yep.
Thanks
no
everyone for tuning in, and we'll catch you on the next episode. Thanks so much, Aidan. Cheers.
Cheers.